Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Store Tackle Caravan. So on the earlier episodes we touched about a few bits and bobs, showed you about setting up a jig for making your rigs up. We covered a bit about shot, covered a little bit about stick floats and making stick floats up onto jigs. So what I want to talk to you about on this episode is a little bit more about stick floats. So we're going to do it over a few episodes. It's something I enjoy fishing, a way of fishing I enjoy fishing more than anything probably. If I can go and fish a stick float out instead of a pole, I'd rather fish a stick. So I thought I'll add a bit more to it. It's something I've done quite a few experience days about stick float fishing and going out and the mechanics of it all. Although can't really go through absolutely everything on a little video. I'll do my best. You can always ask some comments, put some comments in the bottom, ask some questions, or as a couple of people already done already, is fire me over a few messages via email, and I can try and help you out the best I can. So I'll talk about what I know. It might be different to a few other anglers, what they know and what they'll say, but it's what works for me. So we'll go from there. So first few bits, bought me a bucket of water. It's a quick and easy way of demonstrating something for you, which I'll show you in a minute, which is something I use on my experience days, just to try and sort of give you an idea of how to pick the right stick float basically. So go to tack shop. Generally speaking, you're going to pick up wire stem stick, which is one of those, proper old one. That is an old John Alton one. And that is an old Stevie Gardner stick float, lignum stem. So we've got a wire stem and a lignum stem stick. What's the difference other than one's made up, got a wooden stem and a bolster top, and one's got a bolster top and a wire stem? Right, the reason being is this one will sit up quicker, so it makes a more positive float. So because it sits up quicker, show bites quicker. The idea being it show bites quicker, but it's also a more stable float in fast running or boiling water because it wants to sit up all the time. That float, with it being a wooden lignum stem, will want to float all the time, so it will always want to be sat up in the water even though you're shot at it. So if it's really banging through, this float generally with the force of the water will always want to be like that as opposed to being like that. So better for on the drop, although you can use that on the drop, but I'll do it over using that on the drop. So right, this just as a quick demo then. So if I put the wire stem in first, and you'll see that this will sit up really quickly. So it's almost, as you can see from that, go again, so it's almost self-cocking. So that's your and it, obviously from that, quite a lot of the capacity is actually in the wire, so you don't take an awful lot of shot to get that right. So in comparison, this is a lignum stem stick, or light lignum stem. There is some other lignum stems we should talk about a bit later on. So we can put that in behind, and you'll see it just wants to float all the time. So even if I break the water and push it down, it goes, still comes back up, and it's another demonstration. So if it's stood up in the water, all it wants to do is float. So that's generally, in a nutshell, the difference between a wire stem and a lignum stem. Now there is another lignum stem which I do have in my bits here, which is a heavy lignum stem, very similar top to the wire stem, so it's a shoulder top, which we'll talk about again in the set. This is one of DH's, so Dave Arrow's. You'll find that this one, being a heavy lignum stem, will be very similar to the wire stem, but not quite as positive as the wire stem. So I've put that in the water. See, that just nice and gently sits up. Again, nice and gently sits up, whereas obviously the wire stem sits up really quickly. So that gives you another idea of what we can do. So we'll keep it to the two basic. We'll ignore the heavy lignum really for the minute, so we'll put that to one side. But it just shows you, just in case you do go and pick up another one, that's a shouldered stem lignum. Right, okay, let's just dry these two off. So you probably noticed from those two floats there are different tops as well. So one's a shoulder top and one's a dome top. Right, one shoulder top, one dome top. Right, difference being is, other than one's a pointy top, one's a round top. Obviously, the thinner the top, the more sensitive it is. But with this generally being made for sort of turbulent, fast flowing water, you want a fairly big top so you can see it. So it's a nice long top. Dave Arrow actually does, which I think I've got one here. Yep, here's another one. So slightly variation on that. Same principle. That's an insert top. So again, you can see it at distance, and it doesn't hinder the sensitivity. What's the shoulder for? Right, so put that one down. So the shoulder, basically, if you're running through fast water, a line's coming through and attached to the top of the float, through the float at the bottom. Yeah. So if you're holding the float back in the flow, if you imagine the water coming across and going across the top of the shoulder, that water's pressing down on the float. So it's pushing the float into the water to stop the float from riding out. So if it was a normal float, one of these round top floats, dome top, it will want to ride out the water. So the idea being with the shoulder is that will hold it down, and as it trots through, it will trot through quite nicely instead of wanting to come out of the water all the time. Okay, so dome top, more sensitive really, because you've got such a small top on it, ever so small. So you can, it's almost dotted right down in the water. Problem being is, if it is turbulent, you tend to lose it. All of a sudden it will disappear under the water. So it will just keep going under the water. And it will also, if you're holding back hard, and remember this one wants to float, it'll want to ride out the water because it's not got that pressure. It's not got the downward pressure of the water passing over the top of the float, pushing the float down, which is what you get with the shouldered. So we've got, these are fairly new actually. So we got an insert which is basically that. Dave will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure from memory these are hollowed inserts. So it means the light catches it, and almost, even now you can see, and they almost light up. So you can see these, especially if you're fishing an 18-foot rod and it's quite turbulent, and the colour of the background, colour of water, they stick out like a sore thumb, but they're still quite nice and sensitive. Whereas the old traditional painted tops, I don't know whether I've got a yellow painted top. Well, I have in one of these. So you can see, hopefully you can see the difference. Look at that, nice and bright. Okay, so that hopefully, so you can see the difference between a wire stem stick and a lignum stem stick, the way they want to sit up. So that gives you an idea what the difference is between a shouldered and a dome stem stick, when being wanting to have been pressed down into water to make them more stable. So what would I use on each one? How would I shot them? See, if I was going on, I don't know, say most of the river source fairly sort of steady, generally sort of 6-8 foot, nice steady flow. Some bits are a bit faster, but obviously if you went to the Trent can be the complete opposite really. I mean the Saw can with a bit of water on, but as a rule of thumb, the Saw or steady waters, I'd probably pardon the pun, go along the lines of, if it's a nice warm day, I know the fish are probably going to be somewhere up in the water, I'm feeding, generally I'm always taught to feed, cast, feed. So there's a little bit of bait going through the water all the time, so that hopefully you're bringing the fish up in the water. So if I'm bringing the fish up in the water, it's a nice warm day, I want to be catching them in and letting that stick float. So that stick's just running down nicely, and it's on the end of a tight line. So as soon as it dips under, the fish are hooking themselves. So that would be shotted. So if you can imagine you want the rig to fall through the water nice and slowly, you don't want to bulk down here because that would just bomb it down. So and the mechanics of a bulk on a lignum is just all wrong. If you imagine that float wants to do that and you want to do that, it just doesn't really work. It doesn't drop through the water slowly. So shirt button it down. Shirt button as in, you probably won't see, so imagine a shirt and it's just dump 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 down to the smallest shot. Now, to keep things simple, I wouldn't I probably wouldn't taper the shotting sizes down to keep things simple to start with until you get your head around it all. But I would certainly use a smaller shot, more smaller shot down, so you get a nice steady fall, so you can get more shot along the line as opposed to one ear, one ear, one ear, one ear. The more shot you can get, the better the fall you can get. If you can imagine, if you've got one shot at a foot and another shot at 2 foot, we've got a foot in between, so it falls notchy then. So as it's falling through the water, it will fall one, and then it'll wait, and then another one. So if you can get it, so if you can put one every sort of inch or so, you can get it to fall down nice and steady as it's going through the water. So on that point, on your shotting, which we'll talk more about on another day, but that's a 7 number 4 stick float. Now, I wouldn't just go and put 7 number 4s on it. 7 number 4, and going back to some lists I did for one of the other little videos about my bowl floats, is I've done some lists. You find those, either pop in the shop, well, when the shop's open, pop in the shop, pick one up, or they're on the blog anyway. So what I've done there is I've put capacities on. I've done these. This one's a bit of a scrappy one because it's one of my the ones I knocked up to get it, make sure I've got things right. So it's 4 number 4. So a number 4 is 0.2 of a gram in weight. Sorry, it's 7 number 4. So if you times 0.2 by 7, that tells you what the capacity of the rig is. So being as I'm no good at maths, so so we go 0.2 times by 7 equals, so it's 1.4 gram is basically what the capacity of that float is. So that means then, again, when we were talking about making the stuff back at home, this is where life is a lot easier. You can make these up at home. So 1.4 gram. So that means that I can think, right, well, I'd be better off using probably number 8s, shotting it with number 8s. So I'll get a better fall with number 8s. So then I can adjust basically what I can do. So let's take, for instance, an easy one. An 8 number 4 stick float is 1.6 gram. So at 1.6 gram, I can put 14 number 6s, because a number 6 is 0.1 gram, plus a number 8 and a number 10. So I'd put obviously there's a string of number 6s, then my number 8, and then my number 10 would be my last shot just above the uplink. Well, a bit above, because I put swivels on these, so just above. So that would be my telltale shot. Okay, so this list will help you work out, because sometimes they don't say 4 number 4s. I mean, I've got some shot ones here that do actually give you in so I've got, yeah, so I'm sure I've seen one earlier that tells me in BBs as opposed to there we go, it's a MIDI pt1 3 BB, so 1.2 gram. So then you can adjust it. See, if you make your rigs up at home, it's a lot simpler to do it that way. So if you get the idea, you want to string them out. So that gives you a nice steady fall, and it will, hopefully, if you get your feed, you cast over into your feed, and you get everything settled so it's all falling through, and then you'll feed again. So then everything hopefully is falling in unison as it's going through the water, and fingers crossed the bait that's on your hook is the one that they'll pick up and not all the freebies around it. So that's that. Also, again, you can check this float better as it's running through, because it wants to do that. All you got to do is like tap, and it will want to rise up in the water and drop down again. and then you can get it to, so you can get the rise and fall of the bait through the water nicely. So wire stem then? Right, I need a drink. Wire stem stick. You can get these in dome top, but you will find that a shouldered one's better. Right, so wire stem stick. As a rule of thumb, I would use a wire stem stick if I wanted to get the bait. If I knew the fish were on the bottom, it's a cooler day. I either want to make sure I catch the fish on the bottom, and I don't want, if I knew there was loads of bleak about and it was just going to be a nightmare, I probably want to try and keep the fish on the bottom. So I probably might be fishing a wire stem stick over, say, ground bait, or I might be putting baits in using a bait dropper, things like that. So it's a more positive setup. Obviously, as we've seen, it wants to sit up quicker, so it doesn't matter about using it in slower water. If I wanted to get the bait down faster, I would generally shop these bulked. So I'd concentrate most of a bulk, probably, I don't know, 2 foot away from the hook, possibly. It's just depending on the flow. It's something you'll learn over time as you're playing around with them, but I'd use a small bulk shot, and then maybe one or two droppers, and that would be it. So it's quite a nice positive rig, nice positive way of fishing. But I can, if it's pushing through, because of the shoulder on these, I can actually slow the float down better. I can run it through at half pace, or maybe even quarter of the pace of the river. So I'd have to adjust where the bulk would be, because it depends on the rise of that last foot or so from the bottom. Try and adjust the bulk, so I can slow it right down. Sometimes you'll want it to slow right down, so I might be able to actually get it just to tripping bottom, hold it back so it slows right down. It just flutters up till it hits the bulk, and then flutters back down again, and so it goes through, which is generally, it's very, very difficult to try and do that with a straight lignum stick. So yeah, so for faster, or I want to get it down, or if it's faster water, it's turbulent water, you definitely want to get it down. If it's up in the water, it's just going to be all over the place like being in a washing machine, and that's no good. So on the bigger ones of these, I'd look at probably using Olivets. So obviously, these are line through Olivets, comic ones, love these. So I'd use an Olivet as opposed to putting a bulk shot, especially if it's in quite fast running water. If you put a bulk of shot together on fast running water, the water will, the pressure of water will pick the shot up and push the rig through. So if you can put a less resistance, should we say, so you can use an Olivet, which will give you a smaller surface area, and then that will stop it from pulling through. So that's that. What else are you going to come across? They're the main ones. You can get some, you don't really see these around anymore. There's I think you used to call them glass stems, even though they're not glass, but these do sit up quite quickly. That plastic there is quite dense, and it does want to make the float sit up. Again, I haven't seen these, are Drennan, but I haven't seen them for ages in the shops. So that's kind of it, really. So we've talked about wiser shoulder, about sitting up in the water quicker. What else can we touch base on without going too long? I know on one of the past we talked about line, so we'll talk more about making rigs up. What did I talk about? There you go, comic all round. That is absolutely awesome for float fishing because it wants to float. It says on the back of the tin, water, it's probably the wrong way around, but it's water repellent, so it wants to sit up on the surface. It's nice and fine. That is the exact one I use. Sometimes I use this is a 189mm. Sometimes I use a 1.6, which is nice and fine. And then I'll use 0.14 for my rig line. So that's those bits. So it's important, obviously, the line's floating on the surface. We can go into all sorts of depths about length of rods and stuff. Really, you only want to, this is another question that get asked, is rods. So 13-foot rods for stick float fishing for me, unless you're on a small river, not even the Soar, smaller than the Soar, they're just too small. I wouldn't. I know I would go no smaller than 14 foot. I know it's only a foot, but you'd be surprised what difference that makes. You only really want to be fishing as far out as the rod is long, not much further than that. I've seen people casting way past the rod. Can't control it. If you're going to stick properly, if you're going to fish like that, you need to be fishing a waggler. If you imagine that the tip of your rod needs to be connected to the tip of the float, so almost like them old-fashioned radio controlled cars where they used to be connected with a wire as opposed to being radio, so the remote control, should I say, as opposed to radio control. You need to be in direct contact with that float all the time. So if you're fishing, if you need to be fishing further out, you need a longer rod to fish further out. So I've got 14, 16 and 18 foot stick rods. Generally I normally fish 16 and 18 foot myself, find them right. Certainly you can end up being on some places, especially on the Trent where it's quite deep, and casting, you can't cast properly. I've seen people overhead cast stick floats. That's not what I was taught. I was always taught to either undercast or side cast, so you can lay the rig on the water and get everything laid out nice. So it's something really can't properly talk about, but it needs to be sort of being on the bank with you and showing you. But yeah, if you can imagine, the tip of the rod needs to be in direct contact with the float, so everything's nice and straight down, so you can control, you can pick the line up off the water like you would one of the remote control cars, and you can move it about, and you'll be surprised. I mean, when I've been out on my experience days and shown people how that works, I know they all of them have always said, I can't believe how I can do that and get that to move with the correct tools. So I think we'll probably leave that at that. We'll talk about making some rigs up and putting them onto winders. So I always have all my rigs now made up on winders, because if you're making, like we just talked about, making fairly intricate rigs, it's not the bulk shotted ones are fairly simple to make up, but if you're making a nice long shirt button, so if it falls through the water nicely because it's a nice sunny evening, it's easier to make it up at home, make it up on the jig, stick it on a winder. It takes minutes to put it all together on the bank, so you're not faffing around. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. We've been going on long enough. Hopefully that gives you a couple of insights into which sticks to pick up off the shelves in tackle shops, whether that be my shop or somebody else's. Predominantly, most stick floats you'll see now are probably some of the better ones, to be fair. The Dave Arrow, I'll go down that line. It does a nice range of proper stick floats, really. Beautiful way to fish. If you've not done it before, you need to go out and have a go at stick float fishing. So like, share. If you want to ask me out, I will stick it on the bottom down there on the comments, as you have done, or send me an email. Find me on Facebook. You can send me a message on Facebook if you want to ask me out. That's it really. I shall see you all soon for another instalment about stick floats. Take care all. Bye bye.